We're back. We're live. We're here on Monday morning. Mina, Marco, and me on Monday. We talk about energy. We talk about waiting for Gordot, and I'll explain that. But let me say first hello to Marco Mangelsdorf. Hi, Marco.
One enchanted afternoon, I am with my good friends. Hello there, Jay and Mina from the friendly isle.
Mina, I hope you appreciated the music there.
I did. Hi, Jay and Marco, and I'm not even going to attempt to sing. I don't have a singing voice.
Fair enough. Well, okay, so gee whiz, I mean, there's one monumental thing to talk about. That's why we styled the show Waiting for Gordot. And that is 18 months ago, last Friday, NextEra put in its application, its application for approval of the NextEra deal with Hawaiian Electric. And 18 months later, make that June 3rd, last Friday, that day came and went without any action after 18 months of process by the Public Utilities Commission. So let me ask you first, what are your reactions in general that we can drill down? Mina, you go first. You were there. You were the chair of the PUC. So what happened here?
So, I mean, I think everybody's trying to dissect, parse, better word, parse what's being said, and I'm not sure what to think. With the chair saying that he's coming up with a decision, they're coming out with an order in June, you wonder whether there's the votes to approve or
what does the silence mean? You want to interpret it. You want to get some message out of it, some meaning out of it, but it's really hard to do that. What about you, Marco? What do you think it means?
A wee bit of clarification, Jay, which is that on December 3rd, 2014 is when CEOs Jim Robo and Connie Lau went before the cameras to announce that this was the direction their two companies were going to take. The actual filing to the commission did not take place until the following month, mid to late month, if I remember correctly.
No, you're right. You're right. And I'm trying to remember back. It was a long time ago, but you're absolutely right. That was the day they announced their deal, December 3rd,
Correct.
2014. Correct. Yeah. And so the 18-month period, what is significant about the 18-month period? Why do we care about June 3rd, 2016 anyway?
Well, because when the deal was announced on December 3rd, 2014, it had essentially a one-year term, which took it to December 3rd, 2015. That said, there was essentially an automatic 6-month extension from, if the party so chose, from December 3rd, 2015 to June 3rd, 2016. So a lot of us, both interveners and non-interveners, I think were kind of watching the clock tick down last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and waiting for kind of the proverbial puffs of smoke, as you will see when the Cardinals get together in Vatican City to announce whether they've come to a decision of a new pope or not. Black smoke meaning one message, white smoke being another, right? So we're waiting for the puffs of smoke to emanate from the chimney. And Friday came and went, and I talked to some of my Hawaiian Electric friends, and they said, we know nothing. And lo and behold, I guess there was early Saturday, there was that very brief 2-minute two-sentence press release from NextEra and Hawaiian Electric, where they essentially said the deal has not expired. We're still in the game, and that was essentially it. There was no mention of how much longer they were going to wait. There was no mention of an extension of X number of days. It was rather cryptic almost in its ambiguity. It's just that the message was, we're not going away, we're not walking away, the deal's still afoot.
But what's the $95 million provision in there. My recollection is that that if anybody walked away before June 3rd, that'd be 18 months after the deal was penned, they had to pay $95 million. Now, what do you correct me on exactly what that provision is, and what happened to it on Friday?
Well, I'd love to hear Mina's take on it. My take on it, Jay, is that last week I decided to go back to the 346-page document, which I have in my possession, to look at, in this case, it's Article 8. Article 8 of the merger agreement, this is all, of course, public information, has to do with the termination fee. And I can tell you that these clauses in Article 8 are written very, very dense with lawyer speak, and I guess, being a small business owner, I've become somewhat of a paralegal over the years, having read a lot of legal documents, but I can tell that both of you, this is over my head in terms of how thick and rich the lawyer language is in Article 8.
Well, let's turn to Mina. Mina, what's your interpretation of that provision? What was supposed to happen? What happens now?
At this point, I'm lost too. I mean, I just understand that one or the other can walk away from the deal and be subject to the $95 million payment.
Yeah, but wasn't it supposed to expire on June 3rd?
Well, I think what is clear to me, not being someone who has a JD after my name, is that once HEI was able to gain 75% shareholder approval, 75% of the outstanding shares, by essentially a squeaker vote last June, I think it was, after extending the vote deadline by 30 days, they were essentially off the hook for having to pay this $90 million plus the max of $5 million in additional costs. So it's my understanding that they essentially are off the hook. HEI is off the hook, and I mean they have zero incentive to walk away, from what I can tell. So the question really is, to what extent, under what circumstances, NextEra would be on the hook to pay $90 million plus $5 million in expenses. And I mean, I've watched quite a few of pontificators who have gone before the media speaking very confidently about what the situation is going to be, and I would hazard a guess that these people actually haven't read the actual verbiage in Article 8 of the merger agreement, and they're going based on what somebody told them, which is based on what somebody told them. So to me, it's, again, not being a lawyer, it's kind of murky right now in terms of what would make NextEra on the hook for this $90 million plus 5.
Okay, well, let's turn to Mina. Mina, from the point of view of the PUC and Randy Iwasi, its chair, what do you think is going on? I mean, wouldn't it have been a good idea to rule by June 3rd, even though they weren't required? And in fact, over the last few months, they've said, well, we may rule before June 3rd, we may rule after June 3rd. There was no real commitment. But wouldn't it have been a good idea to rule by June 3rd?
Well, I think, as a regulator, you have to be sensitive to business needs. And, to drag out the decision, just to make a point is that you have the authority to do so, is kind of pointless. I mean, I think we have to be cognizant and mindful of the timeliness of decisions. So, definitely getting something out before June 3rd would put Hawaii in a better business climate perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it true? I mean, we have a reputation for being insensitive to the needs of, businesses that want to do business here. And I think this reflects that somehow.
Yeah. But if they were prepared to make a decision by the June 3rd deadline, but couldn't get anything out, then one speculates what was the decision and if there were adequate votes to get it out.
Well, there's logical possibilities. One is, they couldn't finish. That it was going to be a very long opinion. And they had a lot of stuff to look at and confirm. Legal stuff like Marco was talking about, dense legal writing takes time. Let's be very careful. So it could be they just ran up against that kind of deadline and they were not finished on Friday, so they waited. And who knows, we might see it today. In fact, we might see it right now, right after this show. In fact, it could be happening during this show, assuming the secretaries couldn't finish typing it, what have you. But there are other logical possibilities too. And could be, for example, that they really haven't settled on who's voting which way. Is that possible, Mina?
Yeah, I mean, again, everything from this point on is pure speculation. The record is what it is, and the record definitely could go either way because they have this, sort of vague criteria of meeting public interest, and that's very subjective.
One more thing about this, though. I know everybody likes to write long legal documents, and certainly the PUC has written some long documents. But I'm wondering, as a matter of the practice or procedure or the requirement, so call it the legal requirement of the PUC, couldn't they write this up in like one paragraph? We heard all the evidence, we thought about it, we decided that the deal was in the public interest or not in the public interest. Full stop, goodbye, here we sign. End of story. Why can't they just do that?
They can. Yeah. It's really funny. I'm not a lawyer either, but this is just from my experience in dealing with administrative rulings. Basically, as long as you meet the basic procedural framework, you issue your decision, and there's very little grounds to challenge unless there's a procedural flaw, because the courts tend to defer to the administrative agency. So if you look at all these past court decisions where the administrative agency has been struck down, it's been mainly over procedural issues.
Yeah, but if I wrote a long opinion on this and I gave all my reasoning and all my logic and I quoted or misquoted some of the testimony that came in on all those hearings and I maybe misquoted or quoted or misconstrued or construed the documents that have been submitted by all the parties, bundles and bundles and carloads of documents. And if I made a mistake in my written opinion, then I'd be opening myself up for judicial review. If I just said it's in the public interest or it is not in the public interest, then you can't really pry up under that kind of thing. It doesn't allow anyone to take it, to make an appeal of it, at least on that part. Now, maybe they made errors, in the course of spinning out their procedures over the past 18 months. But if you don't write a long opinion, you're not exposing yourself to a critique of the opinion itself. Mina, what do you think about that?
Well, like I said, you can't get to the substantive, you can't argue the substantive stuff unless there's a procedural flaw.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, Marco, I want to turn to you for a minute. And from the point of view of NextEra, what does this mean for them? I mean, they have this other deal they have been contemplating in Texas. Hawaii has not treated them with the kind of respect I think they were expecting. They've had a bad time for the past 18 months. Where do you think they are right now?
Let me, I'd be happy to answer that, Jay, but let me first just kind of, for a moment, channel Chairman Randy Awase. My hit would be that he would very much like to see have a decision that's three votes, 3-0, essentially. And I think that would be good for the commission, good for the state in general, and not have essentially a split decision. How possible that is at this point, of course, like Mina was saying, is highly speculative, but I would think that that's what he would like to see. There was a dissent, what was it, December, January, regarding allowing NextEra to add another 10, I think it was 10 commitments after they cut a deal with the Department of Defense to essentially get DOD to drop out. And in that decision to allow those commitments, Mike Champley and Lorena Kiba voted to accept, to allow that to happen, and Randy essentially issued a pretty harsh or pretty forceful dissent against allowing that to happen. But this is of a different magnitude in terms of the actual decision. I think he would very much like to have 3-0. That will be the decision. But again, how possible that is.
Well, you're right. I mean, they have not agreed on everything. And that same lack of unanimity could be playing right now.
Now, to move on to your question regarding NextEra, I mean, NextEra is, I'm not a financial specialist in terms of looking at regulated utilities across the country or analyst, but I mean, from what I can tell, NextEra is a strong company. Their financial reports have been very strong. Chairman of the board or CEO Jim Robo is thought of as being in a very favorable light, very positive light for his stewardship of NextEra. And I think regardless of what happens or doesn't happen in the state of Hawaii, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference to NextEra. They'll have other fish to fry. Like you mentioned, they're pursuing Encore in Texas, which looked to be a dead deal not just a few months ago in terms of NextEra having a shot at it. And the Hunt brothers, if I'm not mistaken, they essentially backed out, and they're big players, of course, in Texas. And their NextEra is back in the game. So I think it would be disappointing, certainly, for people who have been intimately involved in Hawaii on NextEra's part over the past several years, because they put a lot of time, effort, sweat, blood and effort into trying to make this happen. But I have little doubt that NextEra would just move on to the next article of business.
Yeah, that sounds right. Mina, one thing that I wanted to ask you, and that is, it's about Mike Champley. His term of office is up. It expires the end of June. And what happens now if let's say the PUC does not rule by the end of June? What happens at the PUC?
Well, this is a real interesting question, and I think an article was written by Nathan Eagle in Civil Beat several months ago about the appointment process, and where he, I know he and I had talked about it, but and I can't exactly remember what the article said, but the PUC appointment is not like other boards and commissions, where the governor can make an interim appointment. In the PU section, it says that a sitting commissioner sits past his term until his replacement is appointed and qualified. And I think that's the language in the law: appointed and qualified.
Qualified, Mina? Does qualified mean having gone through Senate approval?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It probably, it's not clear. It doesn't say confirmation.
So when you say that, then the governor would be best advised not to appoint anybody until this case is resolved, and let Mike sit there for a while, so as not to undermine Go ahead.
I don't think the governor has any discretion in this. And see, the thing is, there has been a past practice to when a term ends or there's a resignation, that the governor would make an interim appointment without the confirmation process. I mean, that's how Randy Wase replaced me before the legislature convened in January a year ago. So, but it's never been challenged. And so, one would wonder if there is any kind of flaw in the appointment process, will it be challenged?
Well, it depends on, I think how NextEra feels about all of this. As Marco said, they may just decide to move on if they don't get some kind of reasonable approval. Marco, I want to turn to you now for a minute. And, you're an intervener, and you are at least a spokesman and a principal of the Hawaii Island, Energy Co-op?
Correct.
And this must, we're getting close to the wire here. I can't say we're at the end of it, but we're certainly looking down the last inning of it. In fact, maybe we're after the ninth inning already. I think we are. But what does it mean to you? Is this failure to rule by June 3rd have any significance for your possibilities come in and buy the assets of the Hawaii Electric Light Company?
No, Jay, I would say definitely not. That there's no type of time frame or deadline that we need to see. It's just been a patient, sometimes impatient on the part of all of us, kind of waiting game here to see that the game be brought to a close and a winner and or loser be announced, so that we can all kind of continue on here and do what needs to be done, whether it's Hawaiian Electric and the substantial challenges that they have, regardless of whether it's HEI, who's the parent company, or Hawaii Energy Holdings, which would be the subsequent parent holding company. If NextEra were to get the keys to the kingdom, it's business goes on. There's still people who are interested in the co-op idea here. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with some of the individuals here on Molokai who have expressed an interest of seeing what we've been doing on the Big Island for the past year and a half or so, to see what's possible on this island in terms of a co-op effort. So it's still, we're still in the game. It still remains to be seen what the decision is going to be, which will heavily influence what our subsequent
You think the
moves will be.
decision might conceivably mention you, give you relief, give you standing, give you a possible pathway? Or do you think it will simply deal with the principal question of whether to approve or not approve, or approve with conditions?
I would be beyond surprised, Jay, beyond surprised if we figured in any way, shape, or form in the decision. I believe that this commission, both kind of formally and informally, has made clear that they're very much focused on the decision at hand, and then in their view that there's been no shortage of kind of superfluous things thrown at them that they've been asked to consider, and that they've been very, very focused on the decision at hand, the proposed change of control, white puff of smoke or black puff of smoke. So I would be beyond surprised if we were mentioned.
Mina, I wanted to ask you this. You sit on the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. In fact, you're a major player there and a major influence there. And the forum has been trying to determine where we are on the road to meeting our goals in 2045. And the forum has been trying to look for action points that will, move the needle ahead right now in the next few years. And one of the things that people have said is that while this deal has been pending for 18 months, it's been acting as a bit of a cold blanket. It has held down the initiative. It has been kind of a non-incentive for the initiative to move ahead with the speed at which we would all like to see. And I wonder what you think about how we will be doing after the deal is done, one way or the other. I mean, I guess I'm asking for differential views on the matter. What happens if it is granted? What happens if it is denied?
Well, I think whether it's granted or it's denied is sort of irrelevant to where Hawaii needs to go with regarding its energy transformation. Ownership doesn't dictate how we proceed. I think at this point, from those who are unfamiliar with what it will take to have a affordable electric system, there's just too much emphasis on the generation side, and a lack of understanding on the capacity of generation that we can put onto the system, and the cost to continue to accommodate the low factor kind of resources that we're putting onto the system. So,
well, let me just refine the question by saying it seems clear that if NextEra were permitted to come into this market, that is to complete the merger, they have enormous resources and capital sources which they could bring to the table. And for example, if you have to spend $350 million on upgrading the grid to a smarter grid, then they would have easy access to that kind of capital. Wouldn't that have an effect on things?
No, you still got to build the system right. I mean, no matter who's financing it. Right now it's a big question of making the right investment, not really, who has the financing capability. I mean, the right investments are going to have to be made, whether it's NextEra owned or HEI owned.
Plus, it would go into a rate case, right, Mina? I mean, you would package it $100, $200, $500 million as part of the rate case to be able to pay for the work that needs to be done, which would be ultimately borne by the ratepayers, right?
Right, and so the advantage is, the financial strength of NextEra in when those kinds of investments have to be made. But regardless of ownership, the right investments have to be made, and that's the discussion that continues despite the decision on the merger application.
Okay, but I recall that you supported the merger, and I'd like to know how you feel about it now in the in the time after the ninth inning, and what your point of support is.
I still support the merger, and mainly because, it's going to take more than financial capability. It's going to take organizational, cultural changes within the organization to move towards new business models. And I think NextEra brings that strength to the table, that they have these kinds of processes in place to deal with data. The whole thing is data. We're not selling electrons anymore. We're selling information, or we're transferring information.
Marco, we're about out of time, so let me give you the last whack at this. Do you support this merger? Do you think the PUC ought to approve it? And if you think there are conditions that should be attached, what would they be?
Well, I'm going to continue our strict sense of neutrality on the deal, Jay, in terms of yay or nay. I'm waiting for the puffs of smoke. I would just add one more thing before we close, which is regardless of who has the keys to the utility companies out here beyond, of course, KIUC and Kauai, is that there's still now and will be substantial interest on the part of outsiders from the mainland and international who want a piece of the action here, whether it's smart grid, battery storage on both sides of the meter, analytics and software driven, like Mina has spoken about a number of times. That's not going to change regardless of who is running the show out here. So I think it's kind of overblown the notion that if the deal is not approved, then this would somehow be yet another terrible, terrible black eye in terms of, don't get involved in Hawaii if you're a business because they're so hostile to business out there. I don't buy that.
Mina, you agree?
Oh, I disagree. I think, regulation is key here in how we move forward, and I think there's a lot of hostility that has been shown to business and new investments here, and I think whether it's merger, whether it's TMT. I hate using Super Ferry as an example, but peril. I mean, we just
Okay.
huge investments that were.
We got it. You made the critical list. We've heard that list before.
Yeah.
And, yeah, sure, great concern how Wall Street sees us. Anyway, so it's Mina Morita, Marco Mangelsdorf here on Mina, Marco, and me on Monday. We have sure enjoyed this waiting for Gordot, and I guess we'll continue to wait. Then 2 weeks hence, we'll continue our discussion. Hopefully by then, we'll have a puff of smoke, either black or white. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.